Good evening. I'd like to call the Novi Board of Education regular meeting to order. It's September 21st. If we can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can get a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Smith and supported by Mr. Cook. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. We will now move on to our student board representative report. This evening we have our board representative, Jennifer. I'll turn it over to you.
Hi everybody, it's nice to see everybody again. Hope you had a good summer. And as you should know, school is back in session, and each Novi school is working very hard to ease our new students and re-welcome our returning students. And it's a lot of fun at each school. They're working very hard. But today I want to highlight what makes Novi Novi and everything that's happening around our community to connect the schools together. One big event that has happened in our high school recently is Taste Fest. We had food trucks come to our high school, everyone wearing neon. We were supporting the football game. The marching band performed halftime as well as the dance program. It was lots of fun, and I unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but I know a lot of my friends were, and they had a blast. It was senior year, so I'm really happy that Taste Fest is always a lot of fun to go to. And recently we have HOGO details coming out, homecoming at our high school. We have the homecoming parade that is going to be next week, Friday. There's going to be lots of people in the parade, so I do hope that you're able to view it. And we also have homecoming details such as the September 30th homecoming dance, which will be lots of fun. So if you are able to support your sons and daughters for homecoming, it's usually always a fun time. If you could stop by around the high school, we do hallway decorating, which in the new wing is always so fun. I just love the teachers. They step outside and they're like, oh no, my hallways, they're all decorated in season themes. So it's lots of fun. So we hope that you could stop by the high school at some point. And so moving on from positive things, I wanted to talk more about what this role really means. I know I highlighted that in our last meeting past summer, but I think we're going to push through with more like physical actions to do. So the biggest thing when it comes to this role is getting feedback from the students. And how do I directly connect with the students? And I think one big question I've thought about is, how do I want to get this feedback? I know there's things such as like feedback forms and maybe one-on-one interviews. And I think the biggest thing is getting feedback in person and really hearing their voices is going to make this role more impactful, and being able to directly quote students on what they want and what they enjoy about Novi most and what we can continue is really going to make an impact. So I've taught with Mr. Minka, and he has this thing at the high school. It's called the advisory board, and my friend, she's on the advisory board, and she's mentioned it before, and she absolutely loves it. She gets to meet with students from a lot of different perspectives, and it's just more of an inclusive area, and it's really welcoming. Of course, Mr. Minka, he makes a great job in including everybody. And I think the biggest thing is that I would like to have that in the other schools. I know right now it's just at the high school, but being able to have it in like the elementary schools and the middle school and the meadows, I think would really be nice, being able to connect with all those voices. So my next plan is that next week I'm going to be able to meet with the elementary school principals. So I'm going to have a conversation with them about the advisory board, how I'm going to gather these students that are going to participate in the advisory board, what we're going to talk about, how the space is going to become, and hopefully get their feedback on this idea and if they're okay with me moving forward with it in the schools. So yeah, those are going to be my next steps, and if you have any questions, I'm completely cool with answering them.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate you being here and reaching out far and wide to get student voice and being a representative of our students. So welcome back, and I hope you had a wonderful summer. Also, what's the homecoming theme this year?
A homecoming theme, it's the 4 seasons. I'm a senior, so we're winter.
Oh, nice, that's fun. Good. Well, I hope you enjoy homecoming as well. All righty, any questions for Jennifer? Okay, thank you for being here again. We will move on to reports to the board. This evening, we have the Spring 2023 iReady Data Report, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Meinka.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Mr. Jeremini to introduce the report, and this is something we do in the fall. Again, this is a review of our spring data, so I'll let Mr. Jeremini introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Meinka. As Mr. Meinka indicated, we're going to be reviewing our spring 2023 iReady data. Fairly brief overview for you of how students performed. iReady is one indicator that we use to think about our performance as educators and as a school district. We will have additional reports for you on other measures at other board meetings. We do this assessment with students in grades K through 9 3 times a year. We report on it as legislated twice a year, fall and in the spring, and so we'll continue to do that. I know Mr. Combs put a lot of work into this, so I'm going to hand it over to him, our Director of Curriculum and Assessment.
Thank you.
All right, hey everybody, how we
Andy?
doing?
Great.
All right, so I'm gonna walk you through a exciting presentation on data. So before we get going, one thing we wanted to kind of go over a little bit is some things that we are very conscious of when we're looking at data in education, using data in education as opposed to in business and various other endeavors. So a couple of these just sort of bullet points wanted to go through. One thing to keep in mind, and you'll see it in some examples here with iReady, we are always paying attention to sample size. So when we look at the entire student body, that's great, that's our whole population. When we look at a smaller subgroup, sometimes we have to be aware of how small that population is and how just a few kids in either direction might skew those results. So we're always aware of that. Another one is that we ideally would like to base our decisions on multiple data sources. So we're looking at just iReady, which is one assessment. It's very valuable, but we want to make sure we're kind of coordinating or triangulating that with various other types of data, grade data, M-STEP data, things like that. So today we're just looking at one source. Another thing that is tricky in education is that measurement is often imprecise. This is not like engineering where you can say, well, this weighs exactly 36 ounces. When you're measuring kids' ability to understand social studies, it doesn't quite work that way. So our measurements are good, but they are still not exactly, they're not exact measurements. There's a high degree of uncontrolled variables, so we control very little in the classroom. Outside of the classroom, there's a lot of other variables that go into whether kids do well or not, right? So unlike an experimental kind of procedure, we aren't really a research-based profession. We don't have the ability to run experiments where we would say, well, let's give this particular test to this class, but not to another class, because of course we want to do what we think is the best for all of the kids. As a result, because we're not really able to do experiments and that kind of research, we often get a lot of correlation without a lot of causation. So we can make good guesses, but we don't know for sure that some intervention is the cause of some other effect. So what we do a lot with this is really kind of try to dig in. When we see two things going up together or in opposite directions, that's kind of a trigger for us to dig further in on any one given, sort of data source and look for more data that might confirm, what we think may be happening, right? So a couple of things I put in here just to kind of give you some examples. Using data is what we do to direct our decisions, right? We want to be a data-driven organization. It looks a little bit different in education than it does in other professions. So in engineering, for example, you may be able to use data in a much different way. For example, materials have a very expected boiling point or breaking strength. So I know if I can control those conditions, that's exactly how this is going to behave, right? So it's a very precise use of data. With medicine, you might look at something like, we know whether a medicine works based on these large-scale studies that have been done with hundreds of thousands of people. Of course, we can't quite replicate that in education. And even then, a doctor is going to suggest something because they think it's the most likely chance of improving. They don't know for sure whether something's going to work with you as the patient, right? So in education, we're kind of a step further from that a little bit. So we use data generally with fairly small samples at a district level. And so our data is a little bit less precise and a little bit less, we have less confidence that that we can find causal relationships. And so we're kind of trying to make best guesses of what's going to work and always looking for additional data to gather before we make decisions about things, right? So just to give you a sense of what we're thinking about as we're analyzing a lot of this data. All right, so we'll start with math today. And so iReady is a diagnostic that the district uses and has used for quite a few years. A lot of these numbers are going to come from national norms. So what you're seeing here is the K-5 range. Down at the bottom, you'll see the number of students assessed in each grade. And it's going to show you on the left bar, that is what students began the year at. So in the fall, they took the iReady test, and it placed them in these categories. So in general, what you'll see is that dark green, if they land in that dark green area, that means that that student is achieving at grade level, right? Right to the kind of middle of that grade level or on grade level. The light green means that they're achieving within a band that is that grade level, but something that you would really expect early in the year, if that makes sense, right? So if they're light green in the fall, that's reasonable. If they're light green in the spring, you would have hoped that they'd gotten further than that, right? And then you'll see yellow is a grade level below, and then it kind of goes pink and red for 2 and 3 grade levels below. So you'll see if you look at the data here in general, all of our grade levels, K-5, all improve pretty dramatically in terms of where they start the school year and where in spring they end the school year. Keep in mind, we also give these tests before the end of the school year, so there's still another month or so of learning after we give these tests. So that's K through 5. And then here's math 6 through 8. Again, you see improvements. The data is a little bit different as kids take the test a little differently, we think, in 7th and 8th grade. But it is something, this is a good example of something that would trigger us to dig in a little further to find out, why we aren't seeing quite the same levels of improvement on this test. We've got suspicions, but we want to make sure we're digging in to find out why that might be the case. All right, taking a look at some subgroups. So this is going to show you, this is just the end of the year. So the last data showed a comparison between fall and spring. This is just showing you spring placements. So at the end of the year, where did all of our different subgroups fall, right? So you can see overall theirs at 60%, American Indian, Alaska Native at 68%, and so on, right? Another area to kind of point out, if you look at the column there that has the blue bars, that is data called progress to annual typical growth, and it uses a median. So what that is telling you is how much the average student made what median growth, what percent of their median growth. So you're targeting 100. 100 would be good. They've made 100% of the growth that you want them to make. So any number at 100 is great, and when you go above it, that's really good. So if you look at our overall, 123, that would tell you that our average or median student in this case is making 123% of their expected growth, right? So above and beyond kind of what you might expect. And we see above 100 or above for just about every one of our subgroups. You'll see the 2 that are lower would be another good example of, maybe that's accurate data, but there are 10 kids total who were tested, or 15 kids total who were tested in those areas, so small sample size caveat's going to apply there. And then here is something I think we should feel really good about. These are benchmark comparisons. So again, just looking at spring end of year data, this is showing where our district stands compared to sort of a year to date in the nation, and then a national norm. So on the left, you'll see it says national norm, and it says spring 18-19. That's because that's the last year that they took meaningful norm data. After that, we had a whole lot of, issues with COVID, and so the testing kind of was off. So that's kind of national norm data, but then the national year to date is showing in that same year of 2023, what is everybody else in the nation, how are they scoring at the end of the year? So you can see we've, especially in 22-23, we more than doubled what the nation typically achieved in terms of kids who've taken iReady and landed in that mid or on grade level band. We took a look here at a cohort. So when we look at data in education, one of the tricky things is if you look at third grade data every year, I'm looking at different kids, right? So if I'm looking at third grade this year and third grade last year and third grade the year before, yes, it's third grade, but those are different batches of kids. So this is a diagram that is going to show you a cohort or a group of kids that we followed over the course of their education. So here we're looking at, so for example, if you look at the top, that is the class of 2033, which is just shocking to say. But, so that would be where they scored in 2021 as kindergartners, then showing where they scored in 21-22 as first graders, and then as second graders in 22-23. This is the blue bar from before. I'm going to go back up for a second. So this is that progress to annual typical growth is what we're looking at here. So the good news is, so this is in one subcategory. So our African American students, we're seeing, I coded it green if it had gone up from the year prior. So you're seeing, for example, that class of 2033 made 91% of their expected growth or typical growth rather, in 2021, and then 100% in 21-22, and then 116% the following year in 22-23. But this is the kind of thing that we take a look at and then would dig further in. So if you look at the class of 2032, we see growth from 2021 to 21-22, and then we see this drop. Instead of 119%, now they're at 97%. So that would trigger us a reason to dig a little deeper. Looking at the test, looking at other data, does other data corroborate this? And see if that's a problem that we can figure out why that happened and how we could improve that. But overall, the trend line here is that in each of our graduating classes here that we looked at, we're seeing general increases in their percent progress to typical growth, right? So that's in math. And then we also took a look at another subgroup that we have concern over, which is our economically disadvantaged students. So we see a similar thing here. There are definitely some that didn't go up, but the overall trend line we see is increased progress toward typical growth. Even when they don't make it, the good news is we're not seeing numbers like 40%, 60%. These are still, pretty good numbers overall. All right, so we'll take a look at the same data for reading. So taking a look at iReady Reading K through 5, same thing. This would be the fall placements and then the spring placements. So you're seeing growth from fall to spring in the test. And again, these are all numbers that are pretty high compared to national year-to-date, which we'll show you as we go. Taking a look at 6, 7, 8, same thing. So this is another one that makes me ask some questions when I look at, 7th grade having 43% there early and then 48% in the spring. I'm curious about why there's minimal growth there. Is it because there's less growth to have? One thing iReady tells us is that the further up kids get, there's less growth to have, right? If I'm a kindergartner, I could be reading at 3rd grade level in theory. The further up you go, the harder it is to be reading at a much higher level, and so the growth might be smaller. But these are what we want to kind of dig into and find out. Here then again are spring subgroup placements. So again, this is no longer comparing fall to spring, but just where we are in the spring overall with reading. So you'll see our progress to annual typical growth is really good here overall. We're looking at 135%. So our typical student, so to speak, our median student is making 135% of their expected growth. And then you can see all the different subgroups are all pretty solid there as well. Obviously there's one standout, the 2 or more races subgroup, but again, keep in mind that's 15 kids that identified there. So a few kids scoring one way or another would dramatically move that. If we saw that consistently over time, that would give us maybe some more reason to be concerned about that particular subgroup. And then here are our national benchmark comparisons. So again, you've got your national norm there on the far left. And then if you look at just 2023 data, that is the national year-to-date, what all the kids that took iReady scored compared to just what our kids who took iReady scored. And again, we are close to doubling those numbers of mid or on grade level there as well. with really small numbers at 2 or 3 grade levels below. So that looks really good. And then we've got our cohorts again. So again, this is in reading, looking at our African American subgroup and the percentage of growth they've made. And you can see a big growth between 2021 and 21-22. Every single one of our graduating classes there boosted up their performance. And then in 2023, we see, for the most part, that trend continues. We see a couple that have dropped, our class of 31 and 30, but even those are still over 100%. So, you know, we don't know exactly how statistically significant each of these, 1% change is, but overall, we feel pretty good about this. And then here's the same data looking at economically disadvantaged students. And so again, we see from a 3-year trend line of improvement in their expected growth and what they're reaching. In this case, every class, K-5, in every one of these years scored 100% or better in terms of the median student and whether they made their expected growth. And I think that is it. So, questions, anything you'd like me to go back to? I know it's exciting. I'm going to contain those questions.
Does anybody have any specific questions for Mr. Cole? Okay, thank you for the information.
Absolutely.
I think it'll be nice to see another season of growth and iReady data outside of the pandemic.
The further we get from the pandemic, the more valuable this gets as well, because we can just, there was a couple years that were broken in that whole trend, so.
Yeah.
Yep, great, thank you.
Mr. Smith,
Just-
I think he has one
I'm
question,
just,
sorry.
no, it's all right, Andy, if we have questions or follow-ups, should we direct them, Mike, to you or to, okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are some questions that might have
Sure.
come up if we were at full strength tonight, so, especially in one area, so. All right, I
Absolutely.
just want to make sure how to circle back with you
Yeah,
guys.
we're always open to those.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Alrighty, we are going to move on to our celebrations. Does anybody here at the board table have any celebrations that they would like to share?
Just a successful start to the school year.
Great, I think so too. I feel like it started a long, long time ago, but it's only really been less than 3 weeks. So, okay. We will move on to comments from the audience. The board respectfully requests that any individual wishing to speak to the board provide their name, address, any organization they represent, keeping their comments to the allotted time of 3 minutes, and refrain from directing comments to individual members of the board, district employees, or members of the audience. So if you would like to speak to the board, please hand Sheila your green card. No green cards tonight? It's quiet. Oh. All right, maybe next month. Okay, sorry, Mr. Smith, you don't have anything to do over there. We do appreciate the audience members being here though tonight, even though they're being quiet. We are gonna move on to our consent agenda. This evening, we have 2 items. Oh, I lost my internet connections. Hold on. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. We have approval of the minutes from the regular meeting minutes of August 24th, 2023, and approval of field trips, and it's the 5th grade camp field trip. If I can get a motion for the recommendation? Mr. Cook?
I move that the Novi School Board of Education approves consent items as presented.
Do we have support?
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mrs. Roney. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 5-0. I'm just a little off because we only have 5 people here tonight. I'm used to saying something else. So we have action items this evening. We have Personnel Report A and Personnel Report B. We will start with A. Mr. Micah.
All right, thank you. Exciting day as we get to welcome some new people. So we'll have Dr. Carino introduce the Personnel Report A.
Thank you very much, Mr. Micah. Tonight, we are very excited to be able to recommend Victoria Harrison as the ELD teacher for Novi Woods. She comes to us with over 10 years of experience teaching preschool, kindergarten, and first grade English language learners in Dearborn. Lauren Levy has previously served as an academic advisor in the School of Business Administration at Oakland University. Prior to that, she was a collegiate communications instructor there, and we recommend her tonight for the counseling position at Novi High School. Logan Pulaski is being recommended for the part-time 6th grade social studies position at Novi Meadows. He previously was a long-term guest teacher at Novi High School last spring and completed his student teaching at the University Prep Science and Math High School in Detroit last year. Michaela Kerr has previously worked as a promotions coordinator, purchasing manager, and fulfillment coordinator for a variety of companies. She is being recommended tonight for the secretary position at Orchard Hills. Heather Sinanis is being recommended for the administrative assistant position at Deerfield. She comes to us with previous experience as a realtor and tax staff accountant. Both Dexter Gatson and Charlie Jordan are being brought forward tonight for position changes to full-time bus driver positions in the NTA. They both previously served as part-time sub-drivers. We have a few resignations. Holly Watson is resigning as the school social worker from Parkview and Deerfield. Kayoko Johnson has resigned as the gen ed para at Novi Meadows. And Seth Furlow is taking a leave of absence for association office reasons for the 3rd time. So that is the personnel report A this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Carino. If we can get a recommendation, Mr. Mena?
Yeah, I move that we adopt the personnel report as presented.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Roney. Do we have any questions or discussion? I know we're going to introduce our new staff, but seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Carino.
Thank you. We are very excited to welcome Logan Pulaski up to the podium.
So I'll keep this really short because I have to get back down to the JV football game. But it is an honor to be up here. I've been working in the district as a sub football coach, basketball coach. You know, everything that I've done in Novi, I've absolutely loved. So I just want to share my gratitude and say thank you.
Thank you, Logan. Welcome.
Did you bring anybody with you, Logan?
I did bring my wonderful wife with me.
Looks familiar.
Dr. Carino, is there anyone else here today?
We have to do personnel report B.
Okay, so no one else from Personnel Report A. We'll move on to Personnel Report B, and I will hand it over to Mr. Meinka.
Thank you. We're really excited about this evening because we have 3 people that I think are going to we're just really fortunate to have some incredible talent that we're able to bring into the organization. And we've had some incredibly talented people that have left, but I think that the 3 people that we're going to introduce to you tonight are perfect fits for our team and what we're trying to accomplish here. So appreciate Dr. Carino's efforts to, again, really put processes in place to make sure we're getting really quality people. So I'll let you introduce the report.
Thank you. Likewise, I'm very, very excited about these 3 new directors. So tonight, we are excited to recommend Rosalie Johnson as the Director of Mental Health and Wellness. She previously served as an elementary principal in Walled Lake and played an integral role in their district wellness committee. She's previously facilitated programs such as the Positivity Project and has led work with the zones of regulation. Steve LeBlanc is being recommended as our next Director of Finance. He has a strong background in both accounting and finance, previously working in Garden City, Livonia, and Plymouth Canton. And finally, we also recommend Spencer Riley for the Director of English Language Development and State and Federal Programs. She has extensive experience serving English language learners in her previous role as the Director of English Learners and MTSS in the Taylor School District.
Thank you, Dr. Carino. If I can get a motion for the recommendation, please. Anybody? Mrs. Roney?
That the Novi Community School District Board of Ed approve the above hires and in addition approve their 2023-2025 administrative contracts.
Do we have support? Recommended by Mrs. Roney, and I think that was supported by Mr. Smith. Anybody have any specific questions before we meet our candidates? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Dr. Carino.
Thank you. We are very fortunate to have all 3 of our candidates here today, and so I guess you're no longer candidates because you've been officially approved. So we will bring up Rosalie Johnson.
Good evening. As Dr. Carino said, my name is Rosalie Johnson, and it's an honor to be here with you this evening and considered for this position of Director of Mental Health and Wellness in Novi. I am joined by my family, so my son Grayson is here in the back, and my husband Greg is in the hall with my 5-week-old baby Rowan. Many of you got to meet him, and I'm also joined this evening by my dear friend and colleague Abby. A little bit about me. I have been an educator for the last 14 years, 7 of which I spent in the classroom teaching 1st and 2nd grade, and the last 7 as an elementary principal in the Walled Lake Consolidated School District. There have been so many wonderful things during my educational career, but what I am most passionate about is people and cultivating meaningful and genuine relationships with those people. I have a true passion for also developing the social and emotional aspects of what we do in education. I think it's the foundation of all that we do. And it's the precursor to really cultivating meaningful academics. And so I am so blessed and honored to have the opportunity to work with all of you. I think as educators, we have an exceptional opportunity to foster those meaningful relationships, to develop excellent character, and to cultivate learning opportunities where safety and security and mental health and wellness really is the foundation of what we do. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and for joining your incredible team that's leading the way in prioritizing mental health and wellness. I'm looking so forward to our time together and our work, and I think we're going to do great things. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalie. Welcome.
Next, we welcome Steve LeBlanc.
Hi, my name's Steve LeBlanc. I've been working in finance for about 5 years. I graduated from the University of Michigan Dearborn and previously come from Garden City and Plymouth Canton, where I have done a majority of things in finance, and I'm excited to serve the Novi community and get started in a couple weeks.
Great, thank you, Steve.
And last but certainly not least, Spencer Riley.
Hi, I'm Spencer Riley. Thank you so much for having me here and for this opportunity. I actually got my start in education as a student teacher in Novi several years ago at the high school. I was in social studies at the time, but I had a unique experience because I got to teach some of the sheltered content area courses like ESL US History and ESL World History. And it was through those experiences here in Novi that I really found my passion in EL and kind of changed my trajectory to move into this world. So since then I've worked with English learners and immigrant families in a variety of roles, including as an ELD teacher in Livonia for several years, where I also oversaw their secondary newcomer program, and most recently as the director of English learners and MTSS with Taylor School District. So I'm really excited to join the team here, and I'm just looking forward to collaborating with the staff and students and families to continue to build on the program and the amazing work that's already being done here. So thank you again.
Thank you, Spencer. Fantastic. Great to meet all of you, and we're looking forward to working closer with you. And I also want to give a shout out to all the people that do these interviews. I mean, every time we get these personnel reports, we get a page on the high quality individuals that we're hiring, but at the bottom it's the interviewees, and you can just see over and over and over some names that really put a lot of time. I kind of wonder how they have time in their day to interview all these people as often as we do. So I would just want to give a shout out to the staff members and the team that is being led by Dr. Carino in this great work that you're doing. So thank you. Yes,
I also can't help but notice, Dr. Carino, that it appears Abby has a pretty close relationship with Rosalie, so maybe we could find another position. It's a closer drive for her.
The dream team.
I picked up on it. See that? Grayson, you want to be on TV, or are you okay? Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know that you guys probably have had long days at your current employment, maybe not, but if the baby needs to go home to bed, please don't feel awkward about getting up and leaving. You are welcome to, or you can sit and listen to the rest of our board meeting. So either way. We are going to move on to the MASB call for delegates. I will turn that over to Mr. Micah.
Thank you. So each year, the MASB assembles their delegate assembly. This year, they'll begin on Thursday, November 9th at 7 o'clock, and this year's delegate assembly is in Lansing. And so each year, the board is asked to name delegates or alternates by their respective board, and that decision is here for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Micah. So the slate is blank, so it's probably weird to have a conversation about it without making a recommendation, without talking about who we're gonna put in the list. So no one came banging on my door that they wanted to come or go to the meeting, yeah?
I just wanted to seek to understand, maybe somebody that's done it in the past can,
So
is it
I've been
important that
before.
we have somebody? I mean, is it ideal or is it important? Is it a best practice? Is it?
So I think that most districts probably have someone, but it's hard to tell because it's a very large room of delegates. There's
Right.
probably about 200 people in there. Sometimes there is the voting delegates that are actually counted as a vote. Some districts have quite a few of their board members
Right.
go. It's a 3-day conference, so that is just like the evening of the beginning of the conference, like the Thursday night. And then a lot of board members take classes and they have breakout sessions throughout the weekend. I've gone one time, when it was held in Traverse City.
I remember that, yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. I was actually looking forward to potentially going to this because it's only in Lansing and it's
Right.
super close. Unfortunately, I'm traveling those days, so I can't. But I really highly encourage whoever has the
Well,
time
I'd be
to
willing to go.
go.
I have, 2 students at Michigan State, and I would be
Yeah.
able to visit my daughters, and,
Awesome.
so it would be beneficial. So I would not mind representing us if you all would have me.
We would love to have you.
Okay.
That would be awesome.
Thank you.
We can,
And-
and I wouldn't mind going as a delegate. Again, a lot depends on scheduling, and there's stuff happening around
Yeah.
that time.
So the way that it works is we just put, we can't have, 6 people in the alternate schedule. So usually, like Tom says that he's interested, Willie says he may be interested, so I would ask Sheila to put Tom and Willie and then maybe one other board member. I know I for sure can't go, so I would put myself in the alternate. But if there's one other board member that may be interested, we'll just put your name. And then the way that it works is if you're unable to attend, if there is an alternate that can go, they can put the
Yeah.
vote in for Novi.
But I
So
think
why don't we
normally
do the
the-
other 4 for the alternates then, just, because you can't be there, but it doesn't hurt to have us down, it doesn't really mean anything.
Right, but we need one more person for the delegates so that we can put the other 4 in alternate, because there's 7 of us and 2 people aren't here tonight, so I'm not gonna
You
assign
don't
them
have to
up.
have your name, you're not gonna be in, you're not gonna be around.
Oh, no, I'm not saying me, but I need another person's name. Do you wanna put your name in?
We can, that's fine.
Okay, so we'll have Tom, Paul, and Willie as the delegates. Sheila?
Can we all share one room?
Yeah.
There is,
And then you can put Mary Ann, myself, and Betsy and Jason as alternates. And that's how we'll bring this forward and vote on it. Yeah.
I looked into this, there are no rooms available close by.
Really?
Oh, yes. They are all sold out.
So the closest room is in
I can stay at the
Novi.
JW Marriott, Grand Rapids.
Pardon?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
Well,
an
yeah.
That would be
Okemos?
close. I mean,
Yeah.
but, because I thought about it, because there are a lot of classes that I'd like to take, but
I'll suffer at the JW.
I can't drive back and forth, and I think the closest one was like 20 minutes away.
Probably an Okemos, I would
My
imagine.
house.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way you drive. But yeah, anyways, that's fine.
Just because you
Well,
name's
if we
down
end up
doesn't mean
finding
you're
something for you,
Right.
to stay closer, then we'll let you know, and as an alternate, you can still go.
Well, and, you can't do the thing, but, the voting, the delegate thing, but there is virtual, so you can take the classes virtually.
Right, so that's good. So Tom and Willie, if you want to register for the meeting, just let Sheila know, that she'll register you for the actual meeting as well. So,
Okay, thank you.
if we can get a motion for the recommendation, because we were trying to fill the slate so that actually we can say as presented, because it was blank. Mr. Cook, you can do this, I know it.
Recommend that the Novi School Board of Education designates the following individuals as delegates and alternates. the MASB 2023 Delegate Assembly. Delegates Tom Smith, Trustee Tom Smith, Trustee Willie Mena, Trustee Paul Cook. Alternates, Trustee Marianne Roney, Trustee Betsy Beaudoin, Trustee Jason Mitchner, and Trustee Danielle Ruskin.
Thank you. Do we have support?
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Mena. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to the plow truck purchase. Mr. Meinka?
Thank you. The maintenance fleet is on a cycle of replacing our maintenance trucks. Over the past several years, this plan has been executed. As part of our original replacement plan, we need to replace both of the 2009 plow trucks that we rely on very heavily. We budgeted this purchase this year. These are two F-350 trucks. They're available through the State of Michigan Cooperative Bid Contract, and we'll be purchasing through Longhammer Ford as the dealer. The vehicles cost $52,618 apiece. We also have plows that will be installed on the vehicles. One thing of note, we are going to be shifting through conversations internally we've had some silver trucks in the past. We're going to be transitioning to white from a branding purpose, and we'll transition our fleet to white with the green. If you drive through the city of Novi, if you see a red truck, you know it belongs to the city. So hopefully when people see the white, it'll show our colors really well. And so the purchase for both vehicles is $126,024, and that is there for your approval this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Meinka. Can I get a recommendation, a motion for the recommendation? Mrs. Roney?
That the Novi Community School District Board of Ed approve the purchase of 2 new 2024 F-350 plow trucks with a snow plow and all necessary plow flashers lighting is needed in the amount of $126,024 as presented.
Do we have support?
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Roney and supported by Mr. Cook. Do we have any specific questions for Mr. Kling? No? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. We'll move on to our final action item, which is the Troon Policy 2501 and 2502 approval. Mr. Meinka.
The Governance and Policy Advisory Committee of the whole has met, as well as the Governance and Policy Committee itself over the past few months several times to discuss our Troon Law policies. Policy 2501 and 2502 came to the board for further discussion on the August 24th Committee of the Whole meeting, and they come tonight for your approval as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Meinka. If I can get a motion for the recommendation? Anybody?
Right, you got that.
Mr. Mena?
Yeah, I move that the board approve and adopt the Troon Law Firm Policy 2501 and 2502 as presented.
Do we have support?
I support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mr. Smith. Do we have any questions? Mr. Cook?
These are the last two policies that we need to adopt, and from now on, it will just be updates and as what?
That is
Board
correct.
Gertrude. Okay, good.
Yeah, we received the Troon policy updates for the year, for this year, that the policy committee will now, Sheila's helping us go back and look through based on our new policy packet. But this is, yes, the last two from the original policy changeover. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. We will move on to information and discussion. We have 4 items this evening. We'll start with the Middle Cities Resolution. Mr. Meinka.
I'll let Mr. Kling speak on this if he has anything to add, but I'll just wanted to let you know that in October, we're going to need to vote to change the entity titles of the people who can fill the roles in order to be able to file claims on behalf of the district. Who the coordinator will be for the district in terms of risk. Obviously, Mr. Kling's position is that role. And, we have been a part of Middle Cities Risk Management for a while. They provide general liability, and errors and omissions insurance. And so this pool of risk coordination needs somebody that's a point of contact for the district. And so that will come for your approval in October. Mr. Kling, I don't know if you have anything to add, or?
No, I think it's just adding the trustee to the position and the alternative trustee. So just making sure those are in line.
One of the things that we did, you'll notice in the resolution, is that we've moved away from specific names of individuals so that you'll see the titles of the individuals, which better reflects, you know, in case there's something that happens. So, but that is there, gonna be there for your October meeting, so.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any urgent questions? You certainly can send some over to Mr. Micah if something comes up between now and the October meeting that you are inquiring about. Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Kling.
Yeah, I just.
Oh, you have one? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
see
no
you.
question.
Yeah.
So the adoption writing that comes after, I think that'll probably, since we're not approving it today, the date has to be changed.
To the actual approval date, yeah.
And the present name, so.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. We will move on to strategic planning, steps and meeting date discussion and plan. Mr. Micah.
Thank you. Well, I was hoping to be able to have some dates to share. Just as a friendly reminder, if you could respond to the doodle poll looking for dates. At this time, we have 2 trustees who have submitted that, and I need that information so that we know how to be able to move forward. One of the things that our plan to do, we started by having a conversation at a work session back on July 13th, and we talked about the values of the board. That same activity will be replicated with different stakeholder groups, but I'd really like to kind of lock in the dates and start to have a plan of action. Part of the strategic planning process, it's really 3 parts. The first part is establishing kind of those values, where we start, as a district in terms of those foundational pieces. The next thing we'll start to look at is what do we expect a student that leaves Novi to have in terms of skills, those competencies. And that's the work that we call profile of a graduate. And then the final piece, of course, is then to pull together some of that information and actually start to establish goals and a strategic plan that will eventually be able to be published. The goal in terms of timeline would be that, sometime at the start of the new year, around the semester time, that we would be able to start to approve and celebrate a new strategic plan. It's something that I think is an important part for our organization to have, so that everybody in the community can transparently understand what we're working on, and then we can hold ourselves accountable to those goals that the board sets for the district. So, biggest thing is just to remind everybody if they could respond to that, and then we can start to map out next steps in terms of meetings and those pieces. And I will begin the work over the next few weeks of starting to meet with stakeholder groups. Obviously, we'll have student input, we'll have staff member input, we'll have parent input, and community as well. So there'll be some surveys, there'll be some other instruments, there'll be face-to-face meetings. But you as a board will have access to all of that information as we go through the process. So first step is just to respond to that, and then we can get going.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Micah. Yeah, July 13th, when we held the work session, it was an enjoyable session. The instrument that was used, we learned a little bit about ourselves and a little bit about each other as a team, and I look forward to seeing that kind of pushed out to the community stakeholders and staff stakeholders and other stakeholder groups. So maybe if we as a board can make a commitment to whoever hasn't filled that out, because it takes a while. There's a lot of dates on there. Some of them are probably irrelevant already at this point because the doodle poll came out maybe 2 weeks ago. So if we can get those done by Monday, just so that Sheila has some time to double check the other calendars and make sure that those dates are still going to work. So that would be appreciated. Any questions about strategic planning? No? Okay. We will move on to the October Principal Recognition Month. Mr. Micah?
So this is for information and discussion simply because wanted to talk about it ahead of October, but on October 19th, you'll actually be asked to approve the official resolution. But October is National Principals Month. And we just want to acknowledge the hard work of our principals, and so we'll actually read the resolution next month and have you vote on that. Just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to recognize our people that are working very hard at the building level, and to support our teachers and our other staff. So, again, that month will be in October, and I just wanna make sure I put that on your radar, so that I'm trying to get in a better habit of making sure that anything you see in October, hopefully you see, if at all possible, on information and discussion the month before.
Great, much appreciated, and I think it's good to have it on our radar in October so that we can all do something a little special for some of our building leaders. Anybody have any questions? Mrs. Rooney?
Will they be here at the next meeting, or,
Some probably will, yeah.
but it's not like all?
Probably not all will be here.
Okay.
We'll make sure they're invited, and if it works in their schedule, then maybe they'll be here.
I'm just wondering if we could have like a little something.
Like chocolate covered strawberries.
We'll talk to Sheila.
For that.
She's our something. She makes it happen. That would be nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, we'll move on to our final information and discussion piece, which is the Go Bucket purchase. Mr. Micah.
So the district has been participating in ALICE training since 2016, and this is something that has required us to be more proactive about some of the required tools and kits that we have available for emergencies. We have a new supervisor of safety and security, Dennis Heisman, who's been doing a fantastic job. And so he's been working with Dr. Carino on this project, and so I'll let Dr. Carino give you a little bit more detail.
Thank you. I really would love to publicly thank Dennis Heisman. He has been here for less than a month and has tackled a significant amount of projects and is really bringing the work forward. So I'd like to thank him for his legwork, along with Julie Warren and Sarah Mulick, who are our school resource officers and have collaborated with him on this recommendation. We have been looking for something that if we do unfortunately have a crisis situation and our classrooms either need to lock down or evacuate, that we have materials available for our students. So we have found these Go Buckets. They are premier classroom lockdown kits that contain items such as food, water, blankets, lighting, and sanitation supplies. None of this is things that we like to think about, but in the reality of a crisis, we want to make sure that if we have students who need to lock down in a classroom for a significant amount of time, that we have some items for them in the event of that emergency. So we bring forward this recommendation for you to consider tonight, and then you will be voting on that later next month.
Thank you, Dr. Carino. Does anybody have any questions? I know we received this packet with a lot of information on it, and as Dr. Carino stated, we don't want to think about this, but it's important to be proactive and be prepared, and I think that having a system-wide action plan in each class will make the staff and the students much more comfortable. Mr. Cook?
Yeah, I see that we have possibly some perishable items in here. Is there going to be a regular scheduled check and something that's recorded and we know when things are about to expire?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Mr. Smith, did you have a question?
It was just along the lines that Paul brought up. It looks like, I mean, it's not that expensive if it's $67 a bucket. So the breakdown would be, of that 67, is it $20 every year needs to be?
Maybe not even that.
But yeah, Paul addressed it.
Thank you.
One other piece of information that, we can talk more about, but this is covered through one of our school safety grants. So it's a nice thing that we were able to utilize those funds to not hit our general fund as well.
Thank you, Mr. Meinka. Mrs. Roney?
Not that I sit on the internet and watch things, but there was a video, and one of the things which I didn't see in this kit was suckers. That, especially for the little kids, to keep them quiet. I didn't see that in this kit. I didn't see anything really like that. Is there, could we add something to it?
The nice part about this kit is that it's, we can certainly supplement different items, so that's something I can definitely talk to Mr. Heisman about. There only comes with it minimal perishable items, so we were looking at already supplementing for that because it is not a class set of the granola protein bars, so we would have to supplement anyway.
Thank you, Dr. Carino.
Thank you.
Mrs. Roney. Okay, if you have any questions that come up or you think after you left that you have something you'd like Dr. Carino to reach out and get you some information, please feel free to send an email to her. Okay. We will move on to committee reports. Our first report is our Capital Projects Committee, which met Committee of the Whole, and that is Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Yes, the Capital Projects Committee met this past Monday, September 18th at 4:30 PM. It was our Committee of the Whole, so it was open to the public and all board members. We had Trustee Roney there, Trustee Bodwine, and Trustee Mishner. With the exception of those three trustees, there were 0 members from the public at that Committee of the Whole. We did take time and go through the entire agenda, which frankly we had gone through at the previous meeting, but it allowed, I think, for Mary Ann, Jason, and Betsy to ask some good questions that were well thought out, valuable. A couple of them we had heard and addressed at a previous meeting. The biggest part of that meeting was the construction projects update. And of course, a lot of attention at this time of the year is for the Athletics Gateway and the timing with regards to that being more operational for homecoming, and then by that October game to be really basically turned over. Our hope, which was part of the discussion as well, is that Novi would host a playoff game in November. And of course, by November, everything should be done, the i's would be dotted, the t's would be crossed. And, you know, we're all excited about that project. A few other things came up, and then we talked for a little bit about the master planning update, which would encompass the school years 24-25 and beyond, as we consider and plan for the bond vote that would take place in 2025. So that was it, unless I missed anything. I know, Willie, you were there. Mary Ann, if I missed anything?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Smith,
Sure.
for the update on what was discussed. We will move on to the DEI committee report. So today at 4:30, there was a DEI Administrative Board Committee. We met, Mr. Jeremini led us in the discussion, and Ms. Plonsky was there, and we discussed some recapping of the 2022-23 school year, and some foundations that have been laid over the last year, some really good things, and how that's gonna really move things forward systematically into the new year. Emily shared the summer programming success stories. We had some tutoring options for students this past year that were funded by some grants, and there were also some offerings that were a collaboration with our community education partners, so that our students would have some opportunities for some additional enrichments this summer. So we heard about some great feedback, some data. It seemed like a really, really positive opportunity for our families, and they're using that data to improve it and make it even better here in the school year with some tutoring opportunities for kiddos and into next summer. So we reviewed the diversity calendar, which was launched last year, and making some tweaks to that. The DEI committee, or the DEI district DEI team is meeting and discussing that, and they have their next meeting on October 2nd, and so they'll be doing a work session, and we talked about some things that they'll be going through at that time, some continuous improvement plan goals, and then just a brief overview and kind of a follow-up from the library audit that was done, I would say, about a year-ish ago, and where that stands, and some books and things that have been bought to update the libraries. So there'll be more on that, I believe, at the Committee of the Whole, the DEI Committee of the Whole, but it was a great meeting, and we really, really want to acknowledge the work that Mr. Jeremini and his team is doing to work directly with our DEI district committees. Each individual building now has a DEI team at the building, and so instead of just having, you know, a few people that are passionate, kind of volunteering after hours, it is becoming a part of the work that's being done within the district, and more uniformly instead of just haphazardly, I would say. So it's moving along in a really positive direction, and we appreciate all that you're doing. The next meeting will be, for that is, I think, for the committee of the whole is the 12th of October, if I remember correctly. So we'll move on to the superintendent's report. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Micah.
Thank you. I had the pleasure of attending the NEF Pancake Breakfast, which is an annual event that the NEF holds at our high school. It was very well attended this year, and also coinciding with that, we hosted the second annual parent camp, which is a partnership with the Novi Mental Health Alliance, the Novi Community Coalition, as well as some of our other partner organizations. And we heard from Hunter Clark Fields, who was a best-selling author, and had the opportunity to actually get her on a podcast, which is going to be released early next week, which will be fun on the Courageous Curiosity podcast. Talking a lot about how to stop yelling at your kids is basically the topic. So it's very timely and good for me to hear for sure. I will say we also have a very exciting initiative that we launched this year with our staff. I will say that it was one of the best kickoffs that I've had in my 20-year career. And people are positive, they're smiling, they feel there's a lot of hope in the atmosphere, and it's just really, really great going around to visit classrooms and buildings. And obviously the kids are excited to see their friends again and be back into a routine, but the staff really have just been excellent, building relationships in every classroom. We have really, really great people, and so it's really fortunate. But one of the other cool things that we've started this year is we've implemented a new instructional framework, and we talked about that a little bit at the curriculum committee. But one of the things about that is we're also looking at how do we give teachers feedback in meaningful ways. And so we're starting a process. In fact, staff members this week during staff meetings are learning about how to set their goals, which is really about thinking differently about their practice in a reflective way. And then how do we help instructional coaches and other leaders, and even teachers themselves, provide feedback to each other to help them grow. And this is, we're trying to do something very different, and I appreciate Kim Osmundson here tonight. She's the president for NEA, and we're working very collaboratively with Kim, the teachers, and everybody to try and build something that truly honors the teaching profession and finds a way for us to be less punitive and more supportive in terms of helping teachers grow their practice. And so really excited for that endeavor this year, and I think it's started out really, really well, and obviously we just have to get to the work and get that going. I also wanted to just throw out something that's a little bit unique, and I know this is a long way away, but in February, the American Association of Superintendents and Administrators hosts the National Conference on Education. It's one of the largest education conferences in the country. I have gone in the past. I did actually go last year, and one of the things that struck me was actually a superintendent that went with a couple board members. And some of his leadership team. So I'm just throwing it out there if you're interested. The conference is in February. It's I believe it's the 14th through the 17th. Just leading up to the President's Weekend. But I will just kind of throw it out there as a little bit of a unique opportunity. Obviously, we can't have a quorum of the board, but if there was an opportunity for maybe a couple board members that would be interested, them and their spouse, to come. We would attend sessions, we would learn about some of the latest innovations in education and how those things are impacting our world, and maybe be able to take some things away in our discussion. So I'm throwing that out there just as an idea, and then anybody that's interested, if you could just reach out to me, and we'll take it from there. So that is all I have.
Thank you. I have a question for you. So at the welcome back, you introduced the backwards bicycle.
Yes, I did.
And not everybody was there, but I do think that you put the link in one of your updates. So has anybody been practicing the backward bicycle?
It's been at the middle school, and to my knowledge, nobody's been able to master it. I'd be shocked if they were able to. I think there are people that have gotten on it. There's some that are scared. But the essential thing for anybody watching that's wondering what we're talking about, part of the theme with the staff this year was, adapting to the possibilities of change. And so one of the things we know about neuroscience is that if you change just one thing, in our habits structure, it can be very, very difficult to unlearn something that we've had. So Mr. Scavo, one of our shop teachers at the high school, one of our welding and engineering teachers, he actually created one of these backwards brain bicycles. And basically what you do is if you turn the wheel to the right, if you turn the handlebars to the right, the wheel goes to the left. So that's the only thing that changes, and trying to actually ride that bike has been next to impossible. So what we're gonna do is, this is just the beginning, we're gonna try and have some competitions, we're gonna try and involve students. So Jennifer and I haven't even talked about this yet, but we're gonna try and see if students will be able to ride it, and we're gonna have it travel around to the building. So it's at the middle school now, it'll be making its way to probably Deerfield next, and then we'll bring it around to the other buildings. But it's just a symbol for the staff and for the students to know that we've always done things a certain way, and we can unlearn some of those things to learn things that will make us even better and more efficient and successful. So
Great. Thanks for talking about that. I think it's a really cool thing. I was terrified that someone was going to fall off the stage on the bicycle.
I was too.
Kim's out there laughing because it was a little terrifying, but hopefully at the schools it'll be on flat ground, and I want to see Mr. Smith on it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay, we are going to move on to administrative reports, and I will turn it over to Mr. Kling.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. The funny thing about that bike is once you get used to it, you can't go back to a regular bike.
Yeah.
I feel like I start my reports the same way. Busy time of year. School's back. Meeting with some new administrators, some administrators that have been here on budgets and trying to get them ready for the new year. Never too early to talk about budgets. As you can tell, we just hired a new director of finance, so that's very exciting. The last 2 weeks, we have had Plant Moran in our conference room. They've been taken over, so we're in the throes of wrapping that up currently. But other than that, it's just trying to get through the audit and make sure that we're ready for the school year. So that's all I have for today.
Great, thank you. Dr. Carino.
Yes, thank you. We had our first Mentee Monday session on Monday, where our new staff are able to come together and learn about a professional development topic. So this time it was technology and all about our technological resources that we have for our students and our staff. So our great tech team was able to be there and just kind of showcase all of the programs that we have available to our staff. So that was a wonderful resource. We are excited that we have introduced our 2 of our 3 therapy dogs to our buildings. So we have Cooper at Orchard Hills and Teddy at Novi Middle School. So they began last week, I believe, in the buildings, and so it's been exciting to see the students' reaction to them as well as the staff. I would like to thank 3 different organizations that have donated to our therapy dog cause. We have Preferred Pets in South Lyon has offered grooming services for each of our dogs, so we are very thankful for them. Meadowbrook and Breckenridge Vets in Novi, locally owned, and so they have become our veterinarian of the Novi Community School District Therapy Dog Program. So a special shout out to them. They are providing all of our wellness care, our medication for our dogs, so we're very grateful to them. And I know I mentioned this before, but NEF bought our middle school dog, and so we're very grateful to them for their support of our program. We have just been kind of reviewing our hiring practices, so we've gone through now a cycle of hiring, and we've done quite a lot this summer. So we will be debriefing with our administrators next month at one of our meetings about how the process has gone, where we think we can still continue to improve, and what tweaks might need to be made. And then finally, I just really would like to say thank you to a great partnership between my department and the Teaching and Learning Department. Our directors, in particular, Jeff Dinkelman and Emily Polanski, have done just a fabulous job of preparing our staff for this rollout of our new instructional framework. They've done an incredible amount of work behind the scenes, as have our principals, to make sure that our administrators and our teachers are prepared to make this shift. So I just wanted to publicly say thank you to the 2 of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carino. Mr. Giramini?
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Echoing Dr. Carino's gratitude to our teams for their work, I really think this might sound a little overconfident, but I think this is probably the best implementation of this framework ever. It's really intentional, it's thoughtful, It's making sure that people have time to adjust to that change in a meaningful way and support their practice. So I'm really excited about that and proud of their work. I'm also exceedingly proud of the Professional Learning Week that we provided in August. I know that Mr. Micah mentioned it, but it was, and I'm not here taking credit for it because a lot of the team really did the hard work. The organization, the quality, the engagement of our staff, we collected and received a ton of feedback, very much of it positive, which is of course very rewarding, but we're also able to use that feedback, and now we're actively planning our October and our November professional development sessions, and really taking that feedback into account, so I'm excited to see what comes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, we'll move on to our board communication. Any board members have anything that they would like to share?
Sure, I'll go first.
Okay, thanks.
Just as an aside, I wanted to compliment Duan and Chris, our audience members, for being consistent, your support and attendance for our meetings. Believe it or not, Chris, when you're sitting up here, it's nice to look out and see some faces. The other thing I wanted to do was thank the NEF for the pancake breakfast and some of the great work that they do in the Mental Health Alliance, and I don't know if you mentioned Novi Coalition, but that group and the work that they do. As many of us are aware, September is Suicide Awareness Month, and I wanted to remind everybody, or at least announce, and I know there's not many audience members or who watches this, but there's enough of us up here that there will be, as there was last year, at least one float in the homecoming parade. I know who's building it. The float's being sponsored by the Friends of Novi Schools, and the theme of the float is along the Four Seasons, but as many of you know, we're playing Plymouth, so it's the Wildcats versus the Wildcats. So the theme of this float might have something to do with the Wildcat. Just, no, it's a stretch. But I want to, seriously, I'll reach out to Sarah, because that's the only person I can think of. But I'd love to get some people that support the aspect of mental health, and, you know, some of the high school students I know are involved in that quite a bit. I'd love for them to feel comfortable riding on the float and just being visible. And my vision for that is that anybody that would be riding on that float would be supportive of mental health awareness, not necessarily just the Friends of Novi Schools, but mental health, wellness, safety, well-being for our students and for our staff. So that'll be during the homecoming parade on Friday the 29th. I want to congratulate Mrs. McCagg, who's already kicked off the theater program for 2023-2024. It's my understanding as of tonight, she hasn't announced what the spring musical will be. She's been doing like an NCAA, you know, bracket system, and people have been knocking each other off, and it's my understanding it's down to Singing in the Rain versus Once Upon a Mattress. You know, obviously Carol Burnett won a Broadway Tony for her portrayal and as the princess. So anyway, you guys need to brush up on that. So we'll see what she announces. But anyway, I wanted to just call attention to Suicide Awareness Month in the homecoming parade and the float. So that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other board communication this evening? Mr. Mena, please.
Last week, we hosted our first of two cross-country meets at Novi. This is, I believe, maybe the third or fourth season now. If you recall, since the beginning of time, Novi has been running all of their home meets out in Hines Park. So it's kind of nice to actually be able to formally partner with the city, but now we own most of the property that the cross-country trail goes through, except for some parts around the city fields. So we hosted Salem and Heartland, and that was certainly a successful event. And then Trustee Cook and I hosted Macomb, representative from Macomb Dakota High School last Friday. Both Macomb Dakota and Chip Valley had made a large investment in a lot of the similar equipment that we have at our high school, including the Daktronic board, and it was nice. They came out, they recognized us as the leaders in using that technology, so they came out and wanted to kind of see how we put things together. So that's it.
Awesome, thank you. Any other board communication? Okay. Thank you to the Taste Fest volunteers. I know it takes a village to put together an event like that. And as Jennifer pointed out, even though she couldn't attend, her friends thought it was a fun event. And it's always great to have the community together in one space to just celebrate and be proud of Novi. So thank you to all those volunteers. But that being said, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have support?
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Roney. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.